I think it's good. So my name is Jakub. I started programming around 10 years ago, and for 4 years I am. Since 4 years ago I started programming in Rust. I am currently working in C#, but I just say I spend a lot of time in Rust too.
Still fighting.
Yeah. And I decided. Nice. Let's go.
Rewrite it.
Let me explode. Hope not. We have some technical issues. Okay, this works. Let's say something interesting happened.
Do you have PhD?
Did your laptop die? Okay, it's alive, so let's just unplug it and let's go with the Wi-Fi. I guess my hub is 7 years old, so it could have just...
I guess we have this one. Yes, yes, exactly.
This way up or the other way?
Yes. So I also decided, as you can see, to break the cycle and do it in English. So I wanted to present you also a little story. If I will be off, since I do trials for this presentation in Polish most only. So let's get started. I want to present you 2 libraries. One is a support tool library for that tries to improve safety while creating queries in SQL, and the second one, maybe I will have time to present it. Maybe it's a procedural macro, which is a support for creating procedural macros, which was so complex that I needed to create additional procedural macros to reduce the code base. To reduce the code base by around at least 10,000 lines. So, my first question to you: have anyone here used Diesel? Put your hands up. So for people that have never used it, it's a, I guess, pseudo-ORM for databases. And so you have, SQLite, Postgres, MySQL, etc. And here you can see a little snippet from Diesel, creating a connection, and here is our select clause. But Diesel is kind of an inspiration for the easy SQL, because I didn't like the way the queries are written in there. Since here you, for example, need to specify which columns you want, while you also need to specify here what output do you want. And here to write our clause, instead of using a normal operators, you need to use functions. Also you need to specify if you want to load, if you want just a first result, and also you need to add here optional, if you want, let's say, an option. So let's go to the next library. Here you have SQLX snippet, which also I want to say SQLX is a base library for easy SQL, and it also have some safety features, as for example this query macro, which sends the queries right to the database to validate them. Well, it's nice, but for example, you still need to specify which columns you need you want for your result, which means that you can, for example, select not enough, too many, or for example, do a typo, and to get a different column that you wanted, actually, which is, let's say, not perfect. Also, you need to use question marks to, you have to write here question marks and use a format like, to, which is also not ideal. It would be nice if you could just put it here, this external example. Sorry. Also, you still need to, let's say, use here to get a vector, you need to use a fetch all, or if you want a single one, you need to use fetch, or fetch optional if you want an option. So here you have a snippet from EasySQL, which also I didn't mention, but it supports automatic database migrations, which is why you need to do a setup like this. Here you can see you put which part of database you want to initialize. So for example, here if the example table doesn't exist already in the database, you need to, it will automatically create it, and if it, let's say, currently we have in the database version 1, but we want, for example, but we have already a version 2 in our code base, it will be perform an automatic migration. And here you have here is how you get a connection. You can also use a transaction, of course, but then you need to apply it after you've done all your changes you wanted. And here you have how you're doing, for example, a select. So getting data from the database. And as you can see, we specify the connection, then we use the SQL macro, which allows us to create an SQL expression. You can also use here, specify here the other clauses, but then you need to use, for example, put here a where, then you can do an order by, then you could have a having without any problem. At least in the select clause, so that's pretty much not supported currently. Also, as you can see, we don't have any fetch. So, I forgot to mention, you specify here as a type of the output variable what data you really want. It's also validated. If you can get this data from this table. So for example, you can have instead of vector just example data or option, and all will work without a problem. So let's go and continue. And as you can see, maybe I can try to show you a full example, since I'm talking about creating database, but how do we do it in this thing? So here you have a little example which we'll create, because why not? Do you have any propositions for a name on the table?
The AI has one, so.
Can you repeat?
The AI has one, so.
Is it
Maybe
good?
the classic one, which is dupa
Or an employee.
Okay, then let's go. Also, to create a table, you use a macro, as you can almost seen, but you don't need to specify, of course, the full name. And also, if you want an optional data, then you just, okay, let's say some dupas are timeless. And let's say we are already, maybe let's also specify some, which is a primary key, and for some reason is a name of our dupa. And also, let's say for some reason we have a table of ages. Okay, good enough. Maybe. Can you, let's say,
maybe Roman signature as a string.
Okay. Let's give it a UID.
Oh, that's, yeah.
So now this H points to an it's now a foreign key, as you can see. No zwykle perspektywy, as you can see. Also, since we already specified the tables, and because of the migrations, we need any unique IDs. I also want to make the migration system optional, but let's say it's work in progress. I will make it a feature instead of required. So after we've done with everything, you can see here in an error. Give me a second. Okay, maybe you can't. Yeah, you can see, but I will also fix those errors so it's on the top because it will be better. That the version attribute is required, which is also because of the migrations. So let's add one to both those. And now we have our both tables. Let's create some insert. Okay. This is a insert for, let's say, for the UPA table. Do things like this, and it automatically validates when you create an insert when something is missing. And so we can, for example, let's say we omitted the H, then we have to do something like this for safety reasons. But I also think that I planned to make a feature, maybe not even a feature. I think I found a way to how to make it to detect when something, let's say, has a default value or is an option, so it doesn't require this. This default attribute. I'm sorry. I think compile in just a moment. So let's continue. Let's create our database. Almost. Oh, also I forgot to create let's say a little database structure. And as you can see, you use a database setup macro. You can also, let's say, for the structure of the tables which will be created and updated, nest another database setups for if you want to, let's say, categorize it, for example. Unfortunately, I didn't remove the internal, but
You scroll down a bit.
yeah. Interesting. Maybe somebody could have said something before, but I guess.
Technical difficulties.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A second. Debugging area. As you can see, there's a little bit of. Looks good. I think so. I hope so.
This is how we do it.
Yes, keep.
Okay. Keep.
So let's continue. Let's continue with our code. Maybe I'll give you a moment just to read what happened. And in the meantime, unfortunately, because I also wanted in my private a watcher feature to, let's say, I wanted to get all the queries that are sent to SQLite and send them to a Postgres database on the backend in my private project. So currently, unfortunately, a type of watcher is required, but I will hide it behind a feature, because not everybody wants it, of course. So here's our default doing nothing watcher. Okay, forgot about async, of course. It's not a home. So let's create a connection. Let's say it's a transaction this time. Okay, of course, wait. Wait. Something's off. I can feel it. Okay, it looks alright, I guess. So let's continue. As you can see, Copilot was already trained because I was doing examples before, right before these presentations. So you do, for example, an insert like this. You can also, if you want to use the data from the insert later, you can also put a reference before it, if you want it. Oh, and also, you can use DUPA as input, because all the tables implement both the traits for inserts, updates, and outputs. So let's say we have an insert returning in this example, because both all the inserts, updates, and deletes support currently and returning. Something's off. Okay, it's still broken. All right. Interesting. Huh. Okay, it looks like the migration system broke, which is why there is no tables. Is it broken? No. Okay, now we have it, or you can also see we have a returning lazy. If you want not a vector, maybe you want some optimizations. So you can get it just per column in some operations if you want to. So let's say we want insert, and let's say get, for example, let's say our ID, where it's not useful in this example. You can absolutely find other places where it's useful. Let's continue. Compile line to me. Alright? So let's don't forget that we need to specify a type. Let's say we also implement an output for this one, because why not? So now we can both insert that and get the data in the same example. Let's go with this. Interesting. Okay, that's... Huh. Okay, all right. We do for this one. Okay. Let's leave it on, but it looks like... Oh, I forgot that we also need to specify here our part of the database which we want to initialize automatically. So let's continue. I forgot to make this mutable, which is a requirement from SQLX. And now we have all the data. We also insert the data, we got the data. Let's go with this. Let's go. Maybe let's continue our presentation, since I shown you how to create a database, how to insert, how to select some data. Updating is kind of easy. You just implement more traits. You also can use the SQL. Let's say we do an update here. It's not like the Copilot suggested, it's easier. Nope. I think we can just, let's say, take our age. I think 5 is good enough. And now we have data. So from what I see, there is not an important attribute which should be automatically added. Let's say this is our update clause, which is actually set here that this as update class, then now work clause. And then now let's, for example, good enough. Currently it's broken because SQL convenience didn't appear, which is also an information when you look on it. You need to unfortunately import currently anyhow context for the debug information, but I will fix it. So we already have our database setup done. Let's continue our presentation. I've shown you pretty much the basics. Deleting pretty much is just a work clause like in a select. So I hope it's easy enough. So let's continue with our presentation. So here you have an insight of what the SQL macro generates. And I wanted to show you this neat trick which I used to check if those columns exist on the example table which we operate on. And also this is commented out because it would be nice if it would be here. If it would be automatically generated, but unfortunately it's not yet. But let's say it's doable. And you might notice this unsafe, which is unfortunately required, because when first it was an SQLite library, but then I wanted to support, let's say, more. Let's say a generic, the driver, let's say, also currently it has official support for Postgres. And you can also implement your own if you want it. Or you can create an official MySQL if you want it. Sorry about that. Quite fast, was it? So give me a second. Okay, we're back. So unfortunately required because the database driver is generic, and it can pretty much, the arguments in the SQLite driver can borrow it forever, which is, I hope you don't use the dump drivers like this, because I can't prevent it currently, at least with this example, but I found a way like a week ago how to reduce this library by like 50% and to remove all the unsaves, which is
what is the safety remark?
Safety remark is
like
that
guarantees have to be provided by the caller. Like, you know, common safety.
yeah.
This is safe because.
So I will go back to this since this safety generated in here. This simple safety remark is that this value is still living till the end of this select, and that's it. It's good enough. So also it has some safety system. So example, if you want to create a variable inside of this one, and let's say return a reference from it, since it's a normal block, Rust block, so we can try to do this. But fortunately, Rust prevents us from doing that. So it's So it's the only thing I can say that somebody could try, but they can't. At least when they're doing this macro, but they can try to do it by hand. Well, I'm sorry. That's why the unsafe is here. I mean, sorry, I made it unsafe because somebody can try to do this by hand, can break this safety, which is the main problem. So that's why this is safe. For example, when you use this macro. If you do it by hand, you can break the safety mark, that's why there's no safe. So, let's continue. Also, you might have noticed that this macro currently gets the example table data, but in this example, you can see that we haven't passed it inside of this. So you might be wondering, how did this get the data about that? We are using this on an example table. The way we're doing this is because I haven't shown the full example, and as you might have seen in the interactive example that the automatic SQL convenience attribute appeared, which is the provider of the data for the SQL macro. And as you can see, here's before the SQL convenience, and here is what the SQL convenience does. You can also do it by hand, but what's the point when you can not do it?
So we just put this attribute once in a file. As convenience.
Yeah, it's automatically added by the build function currently, but I also, let's say in the new system, which I already have a working prototype for the SQL macro, for the, not SQL macro, the new macro system for the new macro. It's the SQL convenience is not needed because, and also all this concepts disappeared. So yeah, it's this macro is automatically added by the build macro. So, and it's added to every function where it detects the SQL query. Sorry, the SQL macro. So let's continue. So here you have the how it would look like in the new system, which is with the new query macro, which instead of taking a part of SQL, takes the everything, which also allows me to create some SQL leaks inside of it, instead of operating on all those structures, doing a functions which allow things to break, which is not ideal. That's what, and I already have as I said, a working prototype for this, so I'm sure you can use this safely instead of the other ones. There's no one safe inside. So I plan to do this next week. In the macro you can see, so it will be usable. And then also now here let's talk a little bit about the insights. So don't panic while creating your procedural macros, because it breaks the autocomplete functionality when the user is typing, which is, let's say, not perfect from the UX. That's why you should use a compile error. And also, it's good to use, let's say, instead of quotes when generating data in the macros, use quote span. Create some Rust syntax instead of procedural macros. Quote span gets a span, so instead of everything having an error, only a part of it, which, let's say, user made a mistake. Let's continue. So there's an internal macro. So our syntax trace is an internal macro used by the SQL convenience, and its purpose. I'm sorry about this. So let's say there's a story about. I learned about an alternative after I've done everything. After everything was done, let's say the AI generated me documentation for text cases, and then I learned about the send with mute, which is pretty much an alternative, for an official alternative for my thing, which was done way before. So great. That's why I will present you what both of those does and what are the differences. So they both go through the Rust syntax. So are you interested? I just wanted to ask. Because if there's no point, then
Go on.
okay. So the common goal is to go through all the syntax tree provided by Syn, and let's say we want to and then with visit mute we want to modify the data inside of it. Let's say do some operations. So that's the common goal. So for example, in this expression you have 40 variants which you need to handle when going through this. In the item you have 16, in the item type you have 15. They go recursively, they go all around, which is, let's say, handling this you can make a lot of mistakes. So why can you do this when you have let's say, my macro, let's syn visit mute. So let's continue. I will now tell you about the advantages. So as you can see, you can maybe to make this. Let's make a better clarity for this presentation. Let's go. I will show you how the syntax of it looks. And I'll explain it a bit. At least how you use it. So here in setup, you tell a general prefix, what's the type of the data which you want to operate on. For example, let's say you want to count the number of macros in all the syntax tree. You can use it for it. You can put some data in it without any problem. Also, the mutable reference is important because without it, the macro automatically uses clone because for a good reason. Because that's what the data, exact data which is passed to every function in the tree. So this is just for debugging. We can remove it easily. This is to make sure that every system function which traverses is actually used. So for the safety reasons. Here you have default cases and special cases. The default cases are used. They are, let's say, extending. For example, this one is extending an expression. So it doesn't overwrite the whole the tree let's say, okay, it's called the tree visitation. It doesn't overwrite it, while the special cases does. So for this example, the handle x will never happen because of handle x2 will never happen because the handle x overwrites it. What we can also use another type, let's say syn type. And now those both work, but handle x2 doesn't exist, so let's make it. Also, as you can see, we don't pass any inputs. I mean, you get it from the outside. You need to specify the signature, the signature. Maybe okay. So here you have a syn type. Also, of course, it will break if the types are not matching. Also, if you, let's say, take a type that doesn't exist, let's say an E64, then you will get the information that nowhere in the syntax tree we haven't found it. Of course, for the safety reasons, so you don't do some functions until you wonder why it never happened. So that's the basic example of this. Let's continue. How do you use it? And as you can see, here is the analyze function, which has multiple input, and it finds it with an exact type with attributes, generic. It has both attribute generics and context is just the additional input type which you provided, which is not possible in the syntax mute because syntax mute is a trait, so you have to provide an implementation for both attributes and generics, and you can't, let's say, find a specific places where both attributes and generics are used. And also in visit mute, everything is a special case from my macro, so everything overrides. You need to continue traversing by hand. And here are some advantages of syn visit mute. Since currently I don't have a full coverage, which I found out, for example, that in an attribute there is also an expression. But let's say this was done many months ago, and they found it now, and I haven't handled it, which is one point of, let's say, big problem which should be handled. So it's work in progress. And also the big reason why visiting is, let's say, better is because it's always up to date, since it's a part of the SAM library for the procedural macros, for the parsing of the syntax tree, which is one of the main reasons to use it. And do we have time to go inside?
Not that much.
5 more minutes.
5 minutes. Because maybe then I can just show you how big this is.
Is it already published on Procedural?
Unfortunately not yet. I wanted to publish it before this presentation, but those presentations were too good, so I didn't have time for them.
It's like,
Yeah.
I just briefly checked, just was a bit curious, and I see that it is in Procedural, but it's still version 0, so
Yeah.
basically you created it,
I-
but haven't published it, right?
Yeah, I want to, unfortunately that's it. I didn't have time, but I want to do it. I mean today,
Yeah.
to perform the, yeah. So I don't think, okay, I will show you quickly what's the scale of this. For example, this is the search which goes through all the types. It has only 2,500 lines of code. So it's not small. And as you can see inside all of those handlings, we are using the sub procedural macros to handle all the items. All of the variants for an item, for example. And this macro is generating, I think, another 20 lines of code. Let's go inside of it quickly. So this is generating all of this. And this is used like 50 times. So as you can see, the scale is kind of big of how much was saved. The purpose of this is to find all the potential combinations which the user wants. As I said, for example, the attributes and the generics. And do you have any questions before the end of this?
How much time did you take into to write?
Into this one or the both? Or
This one about macros.
This one, I think I was working 7 days, for 7 days, 12 hours a day.
Nice.
Thanks. So it took quite some time. There's still some fixes needed. I want to publish it maybe even this week. Because this is also a kind of a packet of macros which are with my personal support. I think, as you can see, there are quite a bit of crates. In total, I think I will have to publish 10 in total, counting the easy SQL. So it's quite a bit. And I also, while creating all of this, I had to handle that, let's say, there can't be an infinite dependencies about the macros. One macro can't use itself in the macro. You have 2 macros in this one crate, one can't use the other one, which is kind of a big problem which I had to handle. And I'm not sure if I have anything else to talk currently without taking too much time. So, and to thank you all the guys. Maybe I will continue to the last slide. Somebody would love to, let's say, contribute or something when it's published, of course. Then you can add me on Discord. You can find me on the official Rust Poland Discord server. So I want to thank you guys again.
Thank you.
Thank you.